program. I know lots of you, but not all of you. I'm Ann Rasmus, I'm Associate Director here. And Friday Forum is one of my favorite things that we get to do. We say we do this every Friday. We do this most Fridays. We do typically 8 to 10 Fridays in any given semester. So we do a lot of Friday Forums. We have entered now our 96th year of doing, not our 96th semester, but our 96th year of doing the Friday Forum this spring. The University Y is coming into the celebration of our 150th year of existence here in this community. We're the oldest nonprofit in Champaign County, and Friday Forum is probably our longest running program at this point. So welcome to the Y. We're really glad you're here. My colleague Michelle, who's with Diversity and Social Justice Education, is going to run through a list of all of our sponsors, but I want to particularly thank the Office of Diversity and Social Justice Education, Michelle Nacy in particular. Our partnership with them on this program for the last couple of years has let us pool our resources and not compete, but rather cooperate, which is what we're all about here. We're really glad for their help. Particularly glad for their addition in this semester of ASL interpretation. So thanks so much for this additional service we're able to offer, Michelle. I'll let you do some introductions, and then I will introduce Imani before we get to the panel. Okay, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone. As Ann said, my name is Michelle Nacy. I work for Diversity and Social Justice Education. So I just wanted to highlight our sponsors who help make this program possible each week. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a list of them. So we've got the Center for Advanced Study, the Center for Global Studies, and the U.S. Department of Education's Title VI grant, the Channing Murray Foundation, Department of African American Studies, First Mennonite Church in Champaign-Urbana, the Humanities Research Institute, Office of the Provost, School of Social Work, the Social Action Council of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign, Women in Gender and Global Perspectives Program, Department of Urban and Regional Planning, the Counseling Center, the College of Education, the Student Cultural Programming Fee, as well as Urbana Public Television, who helps us broadcast this each week. The only other thing I wanted to highlight was there are some half sheets of paper in front of you and a pen at the end of this program. If you could take a moment just to quickly fill that out, it really helps us continue to improve this program each week, and I use your responses in planning the next week as well as semester as we go along. And then make sure, if you haven't already, to sign in out at the table with Chris out there. That way you can be entered to win one of our t-shirts this semester. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Ann so we can introduce Imani.
Thanks, Michelle. The one other piece of housekeeping information is to share with people. There are paper copies of flyers out there for the whole series. So we do invite you to come back, and you can find the whole series on those flyers, so you're welcome to pick those up. Okay, so I have the privilege today of inviting someone who I am so pleased has agreed to come and help with the Friday Forum conversation in Cafe for this session, and I hope potentially for some others. Imani Bazzell. Thank you, Imani, for being here today. Imani has worked as a community educator and organizer in the areas of racial justice, gender justice, healthcare access, educational reform, and leadership development for over 35 years. She is the founding director of SisterNet, a local network of African American women committed to the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual health of Black women. Additionally, she serves as an independent consultant with public schools, colleges and universities, unions, nonprofits, state and international agencies, and community-based organizations to promote organizational development and social justice. Imani's commitment to equity and excellence, so a background for today's talk, in public education includes leadership on multiple committees and task forces, ranging from Black overrepresentation in special education to underrepresentation in gifted and talented, community education, and organizing with CARE 3 Coalition for Action on Racial Equity and Excellence in Education, and has served as a representative and leading Black family and community organizer for 19 years in the design and implementation of the recently concluded consent decree Johnson et al. Versus Board of Education, School District Unit 4, and its aftermath. Imani, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. Yay, let's find out who's in the room. Grunt if you're a current or retired educator. Grunt, grunt, grunt. I see you. Grunt if you have children or have had children in public education. Grunt, grunt. Yeah, mine old now. I was showing off pictures earlier. My 32-year-old second grade teacher is here. Where are you, Amy? Yay! So, how about this? Holler if you care about social justice. Yay! Well, really, that's why we're here, right? Every week, that's why we show up. And we're particularly interested in the topic today because it's all over the news, isn't it? Good thing we don't live in Florida or Texas. What you say, right? So with all the attention that's been given to CRT, what does CRT stand for? Or it stands for culturally responsive teaching, which is what we want, right? Nobody tried to teach lawyers' language in our public schools, right, Superintendent? Thank you. Yes. One of the other things that we care about that's in the news a lot is that AP African American Studies program or course. So we see how things get distorted, and I brought up Texas and Florida because they're in the news, but we want to be clear, these things are happening all over the country. This is a movement. Just as we feel we're part of a movement for social justice, there is a right-wing agenda out here. And one of the things that's happening all across the country is the movement to take over local school boards. And we have a school board election coming up April 4th. April 4th, yes. Do not be surprised to know that there are people running for the school board who don't care about equity and who are against social justice. That's why today's topic is so important. And I'm pleased to not have, oh, there's my glasses. When I turned 50, all of a sudden I started doing this. And I had to change them every few years to get stronger and stronger. So we are pleased to have 3 administrators here today from our local school districts. Angela Ward is here from the Champaign School District, Dr. Brandon Caffey from Urbana, and Ms. Patricia Valente from Rantoul. Now, Patricia Valente is the Director of Multilingual and Multicultural Programs for the Rantoul City Schools. She is passionate about building cultural connections between families and schools, and she has been co-leading the work in the Rantoul schools to build equity and training administrators and organizing systems to create better equity in the district. And she's going to give you a good picture of who's in Rantoul now. We have an old image, I think, of who goes to Rantoul schools. So she's going to help us out with that. Now, Dr. Brandon, right here. With over 25 years of service in public education, Dr. Brandon Caffey strives to give educators and students practical approaches to the many factors that disrupt academic achievement and social justice for Black, Indigenous, and students of color, and historically marginalized groups. Utilizing his background, rooted in culturally responsive leadership and teaching pedagogies, Dr. Caffey works with schools, school districts, and civic organizations to transform their objectives and visions into reality, utilizing best practices. And that's what he does as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Unit 116. Dr. Angela Ward is the Unit 4 Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Engagement. She came to this position a little over 11 years ago after serving as a principal, assistant principal, dean of students, and high school literature teacher in Champaign schools. As a middle school principal, Angela led her team to securing several awards that include, but are not limited to, National Avid Demonstration, which she'll explain what Avid is, and NASSP, which she'll also explain. Breakthrough Schools Award. In 2011, Angela was invited to meet President Barack Obama, where she served on an advisory team for K-12 education. Prior to serving in the Office of Equity and Engagement, she supervised all 3 middle schools and helped them achieve National Avid Demonstration status for more than a decade. She is currently the point person in Unit 4 Strategic Plan for Avid, LIFT, Operation Hope, U4's Blueprint initiatives, and a host of other supports designed to help students succeed. So, I'm going to invite you all to come up here and join us up front, would you please? I want to read from a couple statements just to get us started and to set the mood, if I can. So this is from the Rantoul City Schools. As the Board of Education, we affirm and support the right of all students to thrive academically, physically, socially, and emotionally. Rantoul City Schools strives to be a leading school district that closes the equity gap by providing an equitable, engaging, and collaborative environment of learning that prepares students for success at the high school level. To meet the needs of all of our students, we must have high academic expectations, break down barriers, advocate for students, promote multicultural understanding, and embrace, embrace restoration. I'm so happy to see that statement from the Rantoul schools, and it hasn't been that long since that would have been considered something very revolutionary, right, Joycelyn? To get a school district to say something like that. Well, let me take it a moment further and a step further and offer you some quotes from the Unit 4 resolution to declare racism as a public health crisis, as it adversely impacts our students, families, staff, and community at large. Ain't that awesome? So, whereas the Board of Education of Champaign Unit 4 School District is a public school system within Champaign County, and whereas there is a long history of racism, discrimination, and segregation within our country, beginning over 400 years ago when enslaved human beings from African countries and of African descent were brought to what would become the United States. And whereas this history has negatively impacted health, educational, and economic outcomes for many racial groups, and specifically blacks, and whereas extensive peer-reviewed research demonstrates that this history has had a lasting detrimental impact on the educational outcomes of black students and other students of color throughout curriculum, discipline, and school climate. Whereas the district seeks to reduce the effects of structural, systemic racism, this is important because they bother to define it. Defined as a system in which public policies, institutional practices, cultural representations, and other norms work in various, often reinforcing ways to perpetuate racial group inequity. It identifies dimensions of our history and culture that have allowed privileges associated with whiteness and disadvantages associated with color to endure and adapt over time. Structural racism is not something that a few people or institutions choose to practice. Instead, it has a feature of the social, economic, and political systems in which we all exist. It's several pages long, and I won't go into all of it. But I do want to say how revolutionary it is to find public school districts who are willing to make powerful statements like this. I want to congratulate them, and I'm afraid I don't have Urbana's statement, but I'm sure it's equally as powerful. Congratulations, you all. So with that in mind, I want to invite Patricia, would you like to start with Rantoul Schools? I think people don't know much about them and about the demographics. So if you want to start there, give us a sense of Rantoul's vision for educational equity and excellence in their schools and challenges that you all are currently finding yourself facing and any successes that you'd like to share with us. Thank you, Patricia.
Yes. Give me just a second. We do have a mission. I'll just do it. Rantoul City Schools is a super amazing district. It's small. We have about 1,600 students, but the demographics is powerful. I moved into Rantoul City Schools because of the diversity that Rantoul has. Long time ago, that wasn't the case. It used to be an Air Force base, and there was international families that came and visited, but it was mostly white. And as the time has changed, our diversity, looking at the school report card now, is we have 24.3% are white students, 29.5% are black students, which is higher than what the state average is on the school report card. Our Hispanic students are 32.6% of our district, and that's again higher than what the state average is in the school report card. Our mixed students are 13%, again higher than what the state report card has for most districts in Illinois. Our mobility rate is 19%, so we have a lot of move-ins, move-outs. We have a high migrant population that comes in and out of Rantoul. It's a super diverse economic. Diversity is in the economy, is the economics of our students, the high needs that are there. It's just an amazing school district with so many needs. And with the outcrying of the past couple of years, the 3 years ago, with COVID, and then what has gone around in the nation, the frustration with closing the learning gap, that hit really hard Rantoul. And the community members started to kind of challenge and continue to challenge at board meetings. What are you doing to close the opportunity gap? What are you doing to meet the needs of students and families that don't have a voice in our schools? And so in response to that, Rantoul has pulled together community, administration, staff, students, to have conversations that were difficult, to be like, what are the areas in our school district that we need, all the stakeholders, right, that we need to kind of start to talk about and start to ask questions and look at data. And the five areas that we chose were academic achievement, we looked at disciplinary, we looked at family and community leadership. Do we have community voice in our leadership teams? Do we have community in our literacy and when we choose our curriculum? Do we bring in those voices as we're making choices and decisions? Staff recruitment, how are we choosing and recruiting our staff? Are we creating systems that allow our teachers to feel comfortable? When most of our teaching population is white, with the exception from our bilingual program, when we have a lot of native Spanish speakers from Argentina, we have speakers from Spain, we have speakers from Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, because our bilingual program has international students from all over the country. And so it's given us the opportunity to pull in a lot of diverse staff. We're still working towards that with our black teachers. It's a difficult space of being able, where can we recruit, and then how do we keep our teachers when they're brought into a system that's really still very white, a system that kind of has a lot of barriers that are secretly within it. How do we create a space that we can nurture? I mean, simple examples of the language that we use to express the way we interact with one another doesn't always correlate with what our teachers coming into the districts being able to interact with. So as more international teachers, as we become more focused in bringing in teachers that look like our students, it's challenged the system to be able to support it. And so in creating, and then cultural humility is our fifth one, sorry. And that's really about how do we go about interacting with community? What is our goal? Do we go in there as a school district and say this is how you need to think? Or do we go in as a school district humbly? And what does that look like? What does it look like to have ears open and eyes, ready to learn from different people? And so we're really at the beginning, whereas I think Urbana and Champaign have been in the process much longer than we have, but it's an exciting journey, and there's a lot of roadblocks. Because when you're beginning the journey, your staff are still unsure how to talk about, what's a microaggression? What does that look like? How do you resolve that? What's white privilege? What do you mean I'm racist? What do you mean the things that I say aren't appropriate? So having those conversations and having those, the positioning and power is still really new to our admin. We sent a survey out 3 years ago when we started the journey, and we recognized that the discrepancy between what staff wanted to know and what admin knew about equity work. And so in looking at those surveys and trying to create PD for admin that would really kind of bring in what our staff is questioning and wondering about, because there was a good amount of our staff going, I noticed this, what should I do about it? And so we've been working heavily with admin, being able to build a system that's sustainable in the schools and being able to follow through, because I'm not the only one. As the team leader in equity, it takes a village. There's 3 of us that are leading it. It's the admin that's helping us to be able to, and so trying to create these systems that are sustainable is our challenge, but also kind of the exciting journey. When we just had a meeting yesterday talking about microaggression, it was really hard because all of our admin, except for 2, are white. And so what does that look like? How can I conceptualize that? I didn't have that happen when I was growing up. What does that look like? And so having those hard conversations and challenging those biases is super interesting and challenging, but worth the journey, because our kids and our families need it. It's super dire. If we aren't challenging ourselves and looking within what biases or what things we're doing to be a roadblock, our students aren't achieving, and all of our students should be able to achieve. And so what I enjoy about the work that we're doing is that it's a smaller district, so we have the opportunity to bring in a lot more stakeholders and a lot more voices. And so I don't know if I answered all the questions.
Honey, we're going to get to questions and answers, so don't you even worry about it. You did a great job. Dr. Ward, you want to pick up?
Yes, the original question was about our journey.
The school district's vision around, and I know you put it in language of the district's journey around educational equity and excellence. If you can give the audience also a sense of the demographics of the district, the challenges you're facing, and what you feel good about what you've accomplished so far.
So our demographics are 36% Black, 33% white, 13% Hispanic, 8.7% Asian, and about, let's do the math right, 6% multiracial. And for our other group, it's a smaller percentage, less than 1%. We've been on the journey, not necessarily because we are so far ahead and we're so much larger, but because we were called to step on this journey. In 2002, the Champaign Unit 4 School District was part of a consent decree. And that is an agreement to settle out of court to make sure that we address discrepancies that were within our system. Everything from busing to special education, overrepresentation of students in special ed, underrepresentation in AP honors classes. And we're now trying to move past that journey from compliance to, thank you all, compliance to commitment. And that's a different type of shift, right? I think I heard you talk about systems, and some of those systems are structural. There are policies, there are practices, there are procedures. And then there's the human system, right? How we operate, how we move, and what we're willing to do, and if we're willing to move differently. One thing about education is that you become complacent and you do what you know, and you fall back and default to tradition. And that tradition is continually affecting and marginalizing the same students and people that it has been, all the way to the adults. So a lot of our work has been about making sure that we have a strategic plan, and I can have copies of this for you if you want to take one with you. Because we had a plan before. We achieved some things, we took a couple of steps back. So we brought people out to help, consultants to help us survey the community, get feedback from different stakeholders, and we set 5 priorities. One is instructional excellence. The opportunity starts in that classroom when students are not able to access rigorous courses and experiences. The second thing is the educational access. The third priority is family and community engagement. The fourth priority is organizational alignment. You have the people in place to get the work to move and make changes. And then the last piece is strategic resource allocations. Are you sending the people, the resources, the money, and the time to the right places to close the opportunity gap? And so that was in place, and it took a little while for us as humans to understand how to move different. And in the height of the pandemic and a lot of other things happening, I think the whole world had a lesson. And it was broadcast, so the children were learning and seeing too. And our board came back and did something that was very courageous beyond the strategic plan. They put forth a resolution. I've already copies of that as well, if you want to pick up a copy. And the resolution was sort of the wind behind the strategic plan to say, now and with expedience. Like, don't just continue to read the strategic plan, enact. And so in that resolution, I think I heard Imani talk about things like the AP Honors History class. Our board said we want that to happen. It is. It's in place. There are things in the resolution that talk about being able to bring forth an equity policy. Our draft is going forward to be approved. Affinity groups for people who are citizens in spaces. Those things are in progress, and we're going to be bringing forth an affinity policy. So to really make big movements, that's not all that we do. All that we do is in the plan, but the board wants some things to happen very quickly and for us to get to move. And that was really not happening in a lot of districts. So with that being said, a lot of our work is about closing the opportunity gap. We do have equity experiences in PD for all of our staff. We expect that everyone from our hall monitors to SSAs to cafeteria workers, bus drivers experience some of the same things initially. We have 3 modules that everybody does and we talk the same language. And then from there, it's tailored to every single department in the building. And so right now, all of our buildings are signed up with a coach. Equity coaches are going to go deeper on their own journey. Some have to go slow to go fast, others are ready to move. Because systems are dynamic, and you have to be ready to move, and if you keep waiting for everybody to go, you won't make any movement. I can go on, but I'm going to save some of those things for questions. But our journey was, at first, all about, compulsory. And now we're trying to shift to commitment, and that takes time.
Wonderful, beautiful. Dr. Brandon.
All right, good afternoon. That's not going to work for me. Much like my good friend, Dr. Hart over here, we both come from the Baptist church. And so when we do a call and response, you got to give us a little bit more energy than that. So, good afternoon. Now we're talking. All right, first and foremost, allow me to first recognize my superintendent in her absence, Dr. Jennifer Ivory Tatum. Today is our Winter Institute, and so we have a host of speakers and presenters to our faculty and staff today. And so I'm missing out on a lot of that good stuff to be here with you. Thank you. Thank you. One person, y'all should applaud for me. Applaud for me for being here with you when I'm missing out. I need to wake up. I need to wake up. But acknowledging Dr. Ivy Tatum and again being happy to be here with you, much like our counterparts across Wright Street, we serve a minoritized school population. And because of that, it's very critical that we have not only a vision, but a mission also that addresses racial disparities and equity. Now, I will say in large part, when I speak about equity, I have a problem fundamentally speaking about equity alone. Because to me, equity is just 1/3 of the 3-pronged process towards justice. And so you can't really speak about equity without speaking about diversity, and you can't speak about diversity without also speaking about inclusion. But for the benefit of our guests today, people who are in attendance, I just want to read to you what our district vision is and our equity mission statement says. So the district vision of Urbana School District 116, a multicultural community committed to educational excellence, is to ensure that all learners, emphasis on all, acquire knowledge, develop skills, and build character to achieve personal greatness and help create a better society. Our equity mission. We are a community devoted to dismantling inequitable practices so that all students reach their personal greatness and success is no longer predictable by student identity, race, class, ability status, language, religion, sexuality, gender, immigration status, among others. But to achieve that, we first and foremost understand that we must develop educators to be equity leaders. We're the ones who are in charge of the schools and the school district. So we're going to set the tone in terms of our ability to really bring forth justice in public schools. And so to that, we must understand that educational inequity is both relational and technical. We must transform our schools by eliminating inequitable practices and opportunity gaps. We must cultivate the unique gifts, talents, and interests of every child and prepare all students for success in a complex world. So one of the challenges that we're facing, and when we talk about capacity for our leaders, for our teachers, is to understand that equity is both personal and professional. And so we're engaging in a lot of professional development. We're very intentional about some of the different things to retain our staff. We too have started affinity groups in our school district to make sure that as we get staff of color, that they feel comfortable, that they feel supported. But by and large, the most important initiative that I believe that we've taken under our belt is that we're conducting a comprehensive equity audit. The last equity audit that the Atlanta School District conducted was in 1998. So you can imagine we're long overdue. But this is our time to actually explore all aspects of our organization and identify the gaps that we have, because we know that we are falling short. Only thing you have to do is look at our graduation rate. It's not 100%. And if it's not 100%, then we're failing. And we understand that education is the biggest civil rights issue of the day. And so we're trying to explore our organization from top to bottom to make sure that we're doing everything within our power to bring forth not just equity, but social justice. Thank you.
All right. Yay. Oh, we got good time. Y'all ready to engage? Yay. Yay. So, wow, we're really happy to have you all here this afternoon, and now that we got you cornered, we can ask some good questions. And, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind, actually, before I open it up, is, Angela, you talked about it first being about compliance, and now it's about something much bigger. How do community people, how do parents and community people support you in that effort in terms of even challenging the school district? How do people do that? Because I have found in my work, I need to be able to report to people, they're on me, I gotta answer these questions, we gotta take care of this business, the public cares about these things. So the extent to which the public shows up to board meetings, participates on committees and task forces, what are ways that the public can engage each of your school districts to get us closer to this equity vision? Patricia, you want to start briefly?
We had a social equity working group where we would invite community members to be a part of it, and then we had different subcommittees that divided into, like, if you were interested in discipline, looking at the discipline data, looking at the policies that are connected to it. Also with BPAC, with our bilingual parent engagement committee, bringing up topics and asking questions, having open forums where they can communicate about, in Spanish, about questions or worries that they have. Each school is required to form a parent group. It was a mandate from the superintendent that they're required to have 4 meetings each year, and they're required to bring in all the stakeholders so that they can have conversations to figure out what each school, parents, community is wanting to know about. Our board We have many people that come to the public comments of our board that are always asking us and holding us accountable, which helps our superintendent to continue the press with each of us as admin and the teachers. So there's a lot of community members that are not shy and asking, what are you doing? Give us the evidence. We have board members that visit schools to see what's going on, what's happening. And we're still developing more, like the next steps that we're looking to do is to develop a social equity working group within the school so that we can create those safe spaces to try to bring restorative circles for staff members to have those difficult conversations, and then inviting community members, getting more about the leadership teams and other teams. But we're moving towards more of that space. We're still working towards, and we know that there's a lot to do to open that up for community. But we recognize that's where the answer is. Like within our four walls, clearly we haven't been doing it, right? Clearly just keeping locked into just what the school does isn't working. We need to open it up and ask our community members, what do they need, how can we do it? And then allocate resources and put systems in place that we can continue to get those voices into the schools.
And Dr. Ward, one of the things that we've noticed in Champaign in particular, Dr. Brandon will speak to that in Urbana, as people are invited to show up and to ask for accountability and to ask how can I be supported, there's no guarantee it's going to be people in the room like us who care about social justice. And so we know that people are also showing up who are a part of the national movement to take over school boards and to control what school boards do in right-wing ways. How do we address that? How do we keep the doors open and the communication open, but also make sure that we are not being overwhelmed by negative forces? What's your experience with that? That was something positive.
First, I will recognize my superintendent is in the audience too, Dr. Boozer, and our family. And our family and community engagement person, when we talked about strategic resource alignment, one of the first things we did was add a department for family and community engagement, because we knew that the same systems that have traumatized our parents are the same systems that are saying you should come back here and advocate and figure out how to be comfortable in that room. I'm going to start with saying first that you have to be able to be accountable to the public, and people need to know what it is you're up to. That was one of the first moves of putting our strategic plan in the book, on the website, in 3 different languages, and then our superintendent has really taken a shoulder roll to say, this is what you should be able to expect from your schools, and you have a right to have those pieces. The resolution referenced a committee that we've had long-standing and in place, which is the Triple E Committee. It used to be a mandate that we had a space and a table where we reported out to members of our community to be transparent. Now, after the consent decree ended, it could go away, right? Those are things that happen, but each of our superintendents have kept that space available because we know when that door closes, the agency and the power for your voices, people, that's gone. But there has to be more places than that, right? So there's several other ways that we try to open up communication, not just at buildings, community events. We also have programs in place like our LIT program that works with students and families to try to help be advocates. They're at the meeting with the parent, if the parent is scared to go in or not available, or IEP meetings, 504, things like that. So really extending some of that social capital. But we have more work to do. We have more work to do with being able to not just open doors, but teach people how to advocate. One of the recommendations from our Triple E group was that we bring in parent advocacy groups for parents and students with special education, and other affinity-like groups for our parents. So I don't have the magic answer to how we're going to make sure that it happens more fully. I can say that's a work in progress, and that we continue to open up other avenues and try to move meetings to other spaces as well, maybe in other places.
So, Brandon,
when it comes to public engagement, when it comes to the public engaging with Unit 116, have you all experienced much pressure from anti-social justice forces that you've had to contend with?
Simply put, yes. I'll probably receive no less than 5 emails a week from some group or individual saying that my position should be terminated, that our equity work is in vain. There's no need for it here in Champaign-Urbana. And so, yeah, the forces are out there. The forces are real. But again, as a social justice educator, I have to be steadfast in what I've committed my life to do. As I often tell young people, I don't do this for me. I've had my fun underneath the sun. I'm trying to build a better world for you. And so that's why I entered into the field of education knowing I would never become rich in this business. But it would be my life's work to try to make the future for other kids better, even than what I had. And I'm a kid who had a lot of privilege growing up, but I know that we need to level the playing field for all. But yes, the forces are out there.
The forces are out there. How about the forces in this room? Do you have your hand up? Yes, please. Microphone.
We're going to be bossy about using the microphone for the sake of the recording. Thank you.
So my question is, so it's about bullying, like in your schools. How are you trying to plan on eliminating bullying or like make it less happen in schools? Because
So I'll go first. I think when it comes to something like bullying, talking about culture and the culture of a particular school building or environment, and culture is predicated on what you allow. And so teachers and administrators, again, have to be very intentional about what they do to ensure student safety, whether it be physical or psychological, inside of school spaces. And so when we look at that, we have to also make sure that our practices match our policies. You can write anything on paper, but the rubber meets the road when your practices actually back up what you say that you believe in on paper.
Yeah, I would echo the culture is what you allow. And first thing starts with teaching. We do better when we know better. So we have an accountability to make sure that we deliver social emotional learning curriculum and that students are able to reflect on the way they behave. Something that we put in place this year, or actually not this year, we put in place 5 years ago, is a panorama survey where we asked our students how they were experiencing school. And we analyze that data 3 times a year, and I get a chance to analyze it from a global perspective. And we can drill down to see which groups of students are responding differently and be able to have a connection and an advocate in the school. That allows us to see if students feel a sense of belonging, if they feel connection to their peers, and if they feel like they have a connection to an adult advocate in the building. We also have a lot of student-led organizations that are supported by staff, where students can find a place where, if the general reporting mechanism is not working, they have someone that is also an advocate there. We have days where, like some schools, where at lunch, like every Wednesday, to stand up for bullying. We also teach our students that we have to eradicate that culture all the way down to the student level. And that doesn't mean you're putting yourself in harm's way, but just to recognize that this is the way we want to experience school. And we stand united in that space. So we have a lot of different ways we talk back and forth to students, because sometimes bullying is not, something that you can verbally hear or see. It may just be you're isolated from a table. And we talk to our administrators about how do you see that? And the administrator walks over and says, tell me why you got out of the seat, right? So that personalization is really critical. But being responsive, being proactive, and have continual conversations and dialogue back and forth, whether it's verbally or that data is telling us something. We have to listen and respond. We do have a lot of sessions and a lot of initiatives and days that we recognize that in our district. That is an ongoing work in progress. The newest form is the cyberbullying, and just teaching, common sense media and how to avoid it and what we can do to get in front of the things that are now out in the clouds in the space. And some of that starts with effective use, teaching our students that, and then of course us being able to say if it has a nexus to school, we're going to address it.
You touched on doing a lot of social emotional learning, and so really focusing on teachers and students, how do you respond to one another, restorative circles, walking through what does it mean, how do we restore the relationship that we damaged, or how do we go through that. Then having a specific process in the district where parents, if kids come home and report it, that they can report back to the district, so then we're required to go work with the parents and work with the students to find out what's going on. So the district has put a mandate on us to find out what's going on. Those are just some of the smaller pieces that we've done in Rantoul. It's much bigger, but.
Well, again, thank you very much for organizing this important topic. I wanted to raise maybe one question and have a brief comment. I was hoping if the panelists could reflect on some of the economic challenges, the socio-economic challenges that your schools face. I think we can't talk about, the racial disparities, we don't deal with some of the socio-economic challenges. And just one observation, there's a very important experiment that is just playing out in Champaign now, in my view, the idea that you can't integrate the schools unless you desegregate the cities, right? That's one of the key challenges. But I think one of the other things to bear in mind, we are now, 5-6 decades since Brown was on board, right? And as my other collaborator, Ms. Luther, always reminds us in Black History Month, King didn't always only call for, to judge students by the content of the character, but he was also there to cash the check, right? And the Bank of Justice was unfunded. So as I drove here, I heard Governor Blitzker talk about funding. So especially in Rantoul, or in Champaign, would you talk about some of the challenges, the socio-economic disparities you're facing with some of your learners? That's also manifested, of course, with urban and rural divides. Thank you.
Yeah, you brought a lot of pieces up. One was the resegregation of schools, and of course we're seeing that happen. And the first thing we have to do is make sure that our resource allocation matches the needs of school as the human system resegregates. Just because a school is heavily populated doesn't mean that genius doesn't live there, even though we know it needs to reflect the community. We do make sure that the resources, including some of your expert teachers, that's my job to ask, where are the expert teachers in those spaces? Because that's one way to remedy some of the injustices that come with socioeconomic needs. Other things that we've done, of course, is along the lines of technology 101, making sure that we remove the barriers and things that that are in place, in programming and additional supports that students may need in particular areas if they are saturated students from low-income areas. Champaign is, of course, considered a wealthy district, right? But we know how that shakes out when you get to the root of it, right? Our goal is to make sure that students are experiencing school differently and that we mitigate any of the factors that show up in material and human as far as teaching resources as well as facilities. You see a lot of the building and rebuilding is about making sure there's equitable building structure, air conditioning schools, playgrounds, all of those other pieces. And that the rigor and the expectation remains the same.
Our district has low property taxes, and most of our students, at least 90-95% of our students, are on free and reduced lunch. So, if not all of our district is in need, right? And so, our central office does a really amazing job. Jennifer Eriks does an amazing job writing grants. We just got a grant for the community health, where we are working in partnership with the community spaces that are in our, like the WIC or other mental health that are in supports that are in our community and working together to bring that into the schools. We've got after school grant where we have tutoring and we have activities after school in every school till 5:30. And you can do drawing, you can do cooking, you can, so not just meeting academic needs, but also meeting like life experience needs, right? So some of the effects on this, and the teachers all the time talk about, it's not that they just don't know how to read or they're struggling with writing and math, there's so much more in experience. Like going to museums, going out to the movies, like many of our students are at home on video games, right? Where they're not having those other experiences. And so really making it a priority that when we look for grants and funding, we're looking for a variety of resources for our students so that we can then give them those opportunities that not just oh, am I doing reading intervention? Am I doing MTSS with Fidelity? Our class sizes are smaller for that reason as well. Being able to maintain like a smaller class size so we can have more of that intimate relationship with our students so that we can, if a teacher needs to be mom, dad, grandma, social worker, sister, like that teachers have that more of a connection. We do, connection with home visits. We do different things like that as well to continue to reach out and fill in those spaces. Transportation waivers, homeless. There's just constantly, we're always looking for new ways to help support our students. So it definitely is something that impacts how we do business, right? Like, it's different.
So, Ken, I think what you bring up is something that people who are trying to take over our school district boards don't want us to talk about, which is intersectionality, right? So when we think about the intersections between race, class, and gender, which is supposed to be against the law in some places now, is that right? We're not supposed to talk about those things. I hear you all saying as school districts that you put these issues and the paradigm of intersectionality front and center. Just as I'm looking at the time, I hope if you can stay, you're willing to stay. I want to give Kim, could you take a moment? Kim has an invitation for anyone who's interested tomorrow.
Right, thanks, Imani. Thank you. I heard someone say the movies. I want to send everyone in this room to the movies tomorrow. I'm with WILL, and we have an independent film series at the Virginia Theater called, I'm blanking out. Anyway, tomorrow's film is incredible. It's called Let the Little Light Shine. It's an inspiring, true story. How many of you know about the School National Teachers Academy in Chicago? Okay, it was built on the AP's projects when they tore them down. It is mostly black and brown, K through 8 school, highest performing school in the district, one of the highest. CPS wanted to shut it down. Only 2 criteria to shut it down, underserved or underperforming. It was neither. This story is about how the parents, how the children fought CPS to keep their school from shutting down when the board voted to convert it into a high school so South Loop families could send their kids there. So that's the film. We're going to bring the filmmaker here. We're going to bring one of the local activists, the parent. Imani's going to be there talking about local issues. And we also have the principal of the school. So that's tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the Virginia Theater. It's normally $7. I have free tickets. If you want to go, I'll give you a ticket. And then there'll be that conversation after the film. It's extremely inspiring. I think it'll uplift you, give you energy and connection to what you're already doing.
I have a question.
Yeah. Let's get you the microphone. So come and see Kim about tickets. It really is a fantastic film. Yes, ma'am.
So very relevant to that film, Urbana administration has recently proposed shutting down Wiley, which is a Black majority school in the city of Urbana, which is performing very well. It also has the highest percentage of minoritized staff in the entire district. So in light of that, I said I wasn't going to call you out, but after this conversation I got so passionate I had to. In light of that, how did the administration, this is for Dr. Caffey, how did the administration consider diversity in their proposal? How did they consider equity in their proposal? And how did they consider inclusion in their proposal? And then another Wiley parent has a similar question.
I do, and having been at some of the meetings that have been held recently and having some conversations with members of the community and members sort of surrounding the school board, we're not really even sure why Wiley is being proposed to be shut down at all, because a lot of the remediation, it seems, might be possible to do without ever moving any of those students outside of the school. And some of this is coming to light just by making calls to the regional asbestos remediators. So yeah, it's definitely intersecting with this conversation. We're wondering a lot about, what part of equity is being considered here, and are there ways to make this more equitable, whatever's going down with remodeling and what.
So to my knowledge, first and foremost, the decision to potentially close Wiley has been a conversation that has existed for over 10 years. And that the building has been in major needs of repair for a very, very long time. I think what you have seen from prior administrations and prior boards is that one it was a fiscal issue, and then it was also a timing issue. I think the boards have debated when are we going to look to redistrict Urbana? When are we going to look to bring about some of the equity issues that we have in our school district that we are very knowledgeable about? Unfortunately, I think things are kind of coming to a pass all at once, in which we have a superintendent who recognizes maybe the urgency to address the issues with the building now because we do have the money. And at the same time, also looking at the different equity issues that are coming as a result of that. So we are also in the process of looking at redistricting. So all those issues are converging at once, and there's no real easy answer, but we are looking at how does it impact different families and where they reside, what potential schools they may go to next year. It is very complicated. I don't have a lot of that historical knowledge from the past. This is only my second school year in the district, and a lot of those community conversations have not been had with me personally. Actually, I had a very good conversation when I first arrived here today, in which I had the parent sitting next to you explain to me her position, and it's some information that then I can take back and then share with my superintendent, with the board when they seek my feedback. But I know it's a very sensitive issue because I know how much people love that building and the neighborhood school, and I think
It's about the family.
It is about the families, and it's about what's going to happen to that, not just the building, but what's going to happen to those families and whether children may attend school if it doesn't come back as an elementary school in the future. So I would just encourage you to continue to raise your voice, let your voices be heard. That's what the same thing I tell my students. In order for us to make the best informed decision, we really have to have families turn out. Show up to board meetings, continue to call central office administration, engage in the process so that you don't feel like whatever decision is ultimately made, that you were not heard.
I've been voluntold to make a comment. So I know that, and this is a shameless self-interest plug, but I know that Angela Ward is leading this charge around this project that's called Reimagining the Chancellor's Academy. And I'm hoping that Patricia is now, by her presence here, signing on to that. I don't know if she and Brandon got that memo before they came. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that work, maybe just a couple minutes about that work, or a minute or two.
Yeah, I think that the work is relevant. So when you talk about how do we really bring about change, you have to get the whole community talking. We have to talk about raising expectations for the Champaign, Rantoul, and Urbana communities, right? Sometimes money is a divide, and we know that in our district, and we team up on some things, and sometimes just being out ahead of the game is an issue. And you know of speakers or presentation in PD that we don't, or vice versa. The Chancellor's Academy used to be a place where teachers would come out there and the whole community would hear the keynote, and then so that teachers would go into a breakout session for 3 to 7 days. They really enhance and hone in on their instructional skills, and then they go back to their buildings and they have a year-long coach that's really stepping them through changing instruction in students' lives as a result. Well, the Chancellor wanted to take himself out of the center of that conversation. Because the only way that we seal the divide between town and county is that we begin to do things with the town and not to them. So I was invited to be one of 3 co-leads, and there are 6 prongs. One is economic development, health, wellness, communications, technology. They have an IT hub at the Martin Center, and then I have the K-16 inclusive ed. In the K-16 inclusive ed, we have some big keynote speakers that are going to be here July 19th to the 21st. They will come out. We will talk about restoring this thing called joy in school and in our communities and in teaching. As the public hears the same message, once again, with the keynotes, they know what to expect. Our teaching and learning departments are going to use that as a springboard to take 150 teachers into a really great nesting experience. And this time they'll be from Champaign, Rantoul, and Urbana, and we'll talk about what does it mean to set the bar high for our students. What does rigorous instruction mean? What does high expectations mean? And the joy in learning and teaching, culturally relevant and responsive practices. And so this is a new charge. We got to stand in the gaps. The chancellors they handed it over and said, if this is a community, right, and we're the lighthouse, but at the same time we're a barrier, how are we going to open this up? So I would invite you to look for the advertisement. The reconvening is going to be happening in June. It's going to be a huge celebration. It's going to be the first time that we get together and we say the change is not going to happen unless we move differently, because we are the system.
Right, that's good.
Well, speaking of the system, or speaking of the lighthouse on the hill, we are at the University of Illinois right now, and a lot of what's important to the public schools is the engagement of the university, the support of the university, and we happen to have a retired university person here who did a lot of work in terms of engaging the university with public schools. Tom, I'm what does Sam call it? Volunteering you? Volunteering him to say something. Tom, can you say something about university community engagement?
I can give it a shot. But before I do that, I'd like to say this has been a wonderful afternoon. But I don't know this for sure, but I'm willing to bet Imani's next paycheck that this same meeting is going on somewhere else in the country that's just the opposite of what this meeting is. Now, I don't know where that's happening, I just know it is. For any of you who read the News Gazette, there was an article, there was an editorial today by a faculty member from Hillsdale College in Michigan. If anybody knows anything about Hillsdale, that's the college that DeSantis has picked his new CEO for new college, new school in Florida. That's going to dismantle higher education for Florida. So I only mention those 2 things to say that the forces that you speak of are out there, and it used to be, at least in our day, they were more secretive. They're not secretive anymore. And the forces are not simple forces, they're very powerful. And these kinds of activities have to go on forever. With regards to the university, especially in a town like, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and in Pittsburgh we have University of Pittsburgh, we have Carnegie Mellon, we have Duquesne, we have a lot of higher education. The University of Illinois is a power player in this city, in this region. And anybody who's trying to do just about anything has to be able to engage the university. And so if we're going to talk about improving the quality of education for everyone, then the university has to be able to be engaged, we have to be able to access the resources that they have in order to pull off what you folks have all described in the task that you have to do. We were able to do some pretty exciting things probably about 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, I just met Scott Althouse he worked with us in trying to run, he's from the University of Political Science. He helped us put together an election campaign You have to be able to know where the pockets are in the university to do that. Kim Cranitz has resources that the public schools can take advantage of. The Krannert Art Museum and Krannert Center for Performing Arts, they have resources that you have to take advantage of if you want to give your kids an exceptional educational experience. So I want to applaud the work that you're doing, keep it up, and I was kind of taken back by both sets of statistics that you gave about the demographics of Champaign. Those aren't the demographics that I'm familiar with. And when I hear them, I really worry if our task is to be able to put together resources. Are these the children of parents who have access and have resources in our district? I don't know the answer, only you guys know the answer, but I think it puts more pressure on us in order to bring about the kinds of things that we want to achieve.
Thank you. That was Dr. Tom. Yes, ma'am. We have another question over here.
I prefer to speak without a mic.
Well, it's being recorded.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know if I'm going to sound like I'm murmuring with a mask or whatever. But hi, everyone. I'm a student here at the university, and the questions I have amongst all of the panelists are what are ways to kind of fill those transitional gaps about education? Like all of you mentioned that it's not just about the educational aspect, but also the communicative aspect, and you kind of have to have all of those intersecting points to kind of unify like exceptional academic performances. So what are some ways like you guys are trying to transition for those students to kind of have that change of education, kind of enjoy it more, feel more comfortable exploring those new things you are creating? Because I kind of have a little bit of experience working with kids in all of your systems, and the common issue is just like they feel like they cannot relate to all of the systems. They're trying to find a way to intersect into the systems we are all developing. So what are some better ways to kind of get those students' perspectives and opinions on the system you all, or we all, are creating for them to model?
Excellent question. The first thing that comes to my mind is a phrase that my mother gave me when I first went into education. And she simply said, and she was an educator herself, she taught English at the high school I graduated from. I dropped her class. It's an interesting tidbit. My mother told me, she said, if kids don't learn the way you teach them the way they learn. Very simplistic, but yet powerful at the same time. Today, we have a phrase for it. This is called culturally responsive teaching. That is the way that you make that transition, that you can engage all students into the educational process. That's the way that you teach them about who they are, so they have a positive self-identity, and if they want to be engaged in that educational process, take that information that they're learning and then use it out in this real world.
And I would echo that and say that the burden should be on the back of the students. They built a whole metaverse in their phones and electronically because they are disinterested, and we have to figure out how we leverage the power that they walk into the classrooms with to change lives. I think one of the biggest pieces we miss often is when we're engaging in culturally responsive teaching, doesn't result in empowerment. We're sitting here looking at the people who are willing to stand in the gaps, but our students are needing a lot of change. And how is what we're teaching them helping them to change their situations? Because we can talk about poverty, we can talk about disinterest, we can talk about gaps. But if what we're giving them is not going to move them to the next level, then why are we doing this? And that's what some of our students are asking. So empowering structures and being able to show students and model for them and move and change a little bit, as a result of how they're learning. That back and forth conversation once again, and the why, get back to the why are we doing this, and how we're going to really hand off the torch.
I think for me, most of my experience is in the bilingual, multicultural, curriculum. And so making sure that students' voice and their testimonials are really integrated into the curriculum, that who they are, who their families are, where they've come from, whatever languages they speak, that is integrated into the classroom, into the instruction, and that they're seeing texts, they're listening to music, they're eating food, having those moments in the classroom where the students are bringing who they are to the table, right? And then also creating family space, right? So not only do I want to hear create space for students to have voice, but also creating space where families have voice. So parent-teacher conferences are not always places for parents to have a voice, right? So training teachers or working with teachers to be like, let's not just talk about data, let's talk about like what's going on with your family, or what kind of, what's this big event, like making the human side of education an important and more important spot, So when I'm evaluating teachers, when I'm having conversations, what humanity are you bringing to your teaching? Do I see your kids in the teaching? Do I see you in the teaching? So not only do I need to validate students and parents, but I also need to validate the teachers. Who are you? And then who are you affect what the students are seeing? How can we, and if it's so different, how do we reconcile those spaces, right? A lot of my teachers that I work with in the bilingual program look like their students have had similar experiences, so it's taking those experiences and integrating. But what do you do with the teachers that, like myself, I didn't grow up the same way my students that I taught did. It's how do we create situations where I'm going over to the house to eat with the family, or the family's coming over to bring, so creating human experiences. That's more at the smaller level, right? Instructional, human connection. And then bringing that out to more district level policies, talking about home visits, how do we have those interactions, creating groups and systems where students can have conversations where they feel they're not included or they are included. And then once you get student voice, then we can bring in I know my students, I know Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month is super superficial sometimes, and it's it can be, but it's also the door into a very white majority school system that gets you to introduce culturally relevant pedagogy into the classroom and into the school. That's why it can become a secret way in and then an explosion inside. And so we're having sturdy context. We know that our kids enjoy dancing in a certain way, so let's bring that into the school, right? So it's really at that smaller level, starting grassroots, organic, finding out the voices, and then integrating that into systems. Super slow, and not always. It takes time.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Bazzell. He walked out. I think a really critical piece is changing schools to be a place and not just a space for students. And I know there's a reading all about that. Space is just an empty room that we occupy. We have to come in and nobody knows anything about us. But a place is like home. It's where you belong. You're already a scholar and excellence lives in you, particularly our Black students, and help them understand that they belong in that space. And then they're ready to get spoken.
Fabulous, wonderful. It is 1:20. I don't want to run anybody out here because this is my thing. I want to talk about it all day, but I know some people are ready to go. Do we have any other comments? I keep making eye contact with you. You gonna say something?
I would love to say something.
Here, baby.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you all for being here and for having this forum. I am new to this area, and this is definitely something that has gotten me out the house since I'm from North Carolina, so I've been trying to stay in because of this weather. So this is coming from a 22-year teacher. I just left the classroom in November. And this sounds awesome. This sounds amazing. We have all of these, forums and initiatives on equity, inclusion, and social justice, and teachers are burned out.
Yes.
They are leaving the classroom in record number. At the school that I just left, we were averaging one teacher resigning or quitting, every single week for the first semester. This is important, but if your teachers are burnt out, they're not in the position to really exhibit this and bring it to your children. So how are you dealing with the burnout of teachers so that they're in the position to make these changes that we all want in the classroom? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. And I know time is short. I just want to go quickly. Compassion fatigue is real. what I try to do is share readings and information on that so people can recognize exactly what it is you're feeling. We also, with affinity spaces, places where teachers can go back into the web and sort of refresh and be able to rationalize what they're experiencing. And then, of course, we have this whole concept of joy, bringing joy back to teaching and re-professionalizing. We get into isolated spaces, and so we need to find more spaces just like here when we network. It's so much harder if you don't have to go at it alone. We're trying to figure out some things isolated that somebody's already figured out, and we're allowing our teachers to suffer in silence. We need to be able to bring them back together and treat teachers as professionals instead of deprofessionalizing that realm. There's other things that I can mention, but I'm going to give other people time to talk.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, actually. Not only is compassion fatigue real, but equity fatigue is also real. And we have a lot of people who are getting burned out on this work. And so we always have to try to recenter the purpose and the mission of, again, it's not just about equity, it's about social justice. And everything that we can do to support our teachers is important. In fact, I have to run out of here as fast as I can because we have an affinity group meeting tonight for our African American staff members, and we're going to have just a game night because this is going to be a space for them to come and just kind of let their hair down, you know, and just engage in some fun activities and be a supportive group for one another because come Monday, well not Monday, but on Tuesday, they have to re-enter those spaces and be prepared to take on all the challenges that come with just the profession of teaching. And so, a lot of challenges, but we have to do it. We have a lot of turnover in education right now. We have a serious shortage, and so we can't afford to lose not another individual from this profession. So.
Yeah, and we wrote, precisely this, we wrote a grant, and it's the community health grant, and it includes certain funds set aside for teachers. Like there's massage chairs in there, there's money for snacks and soda. We have lunch and relax. So you can eat lunch and talk about like, how do I make plans when I feel overwhelmed? So really trying to bring the mental health to the teachers is really important. And then also I think affinity groups has been super, I know like for our bilingual teachers that speak mostly Spanish, sharing out what they're doing and they're going to each other's classrooms and then being able to have parties where they bring food and they can be loud and be who they are. I think it's like giving teachers that space to be who they are is really important too. But definitely mental health for teachers is important.
We have a link on our website called Care Solace. It's access to mental health and resources and supports. It's not just open for our students, it's open to our staff members and families. And so if you know a teacher that's suffering in the area, Rantoul and Urbana teachers have access when you have it from your link so that we can get help and support when it's beyond the classroom.
Very excellent observation to make. We're going to have to wrap up now. But let me tell you something, this conversation is not over. I think a number of us have tried to sound the alarm about how serious this time is in our country's history, and that happens on the micro level right here in Champaign-Urbana and Rantoul. So I hope that you all will be willing to engage. I think teachers feel less burnout when they see community members and family members engaging the district so they don't feel like they're in it by themselves. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's thank Patricia, Angela, and Brandon. And thank the other school district people who were able to come out today but had to leave to get to 1 o'clock appointments. And I hope to see everybody